Immerse yourself in stories of people and businesses shaping the economy of the Putnam County region. Get the scoop on development, small town successes, and hear from business leaders, entrepreneurs, and natives bringing innovative ideas back home. Our goal is to inform and inspire you to feel rooted to the place you call home. I'll be your host, Amy Seitz, at the Putnam County CIC. We're excited you're here. Welcome to Putnam Pulse. This is our story. Today we are here with Seitz Clinton from the DeFord Boutique Hotel and Nicole Wise from Brick Street Studio. We're excited to hear about the story and some of the back-end history of the development of the DeFord building on Main Street in downtown Ottawa. Welcome, Megan and Nicole.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So Megan, you grew up here and Nicole did as well, and you both spent some time out of the area pursuing education and your early careers, and then you came back and got to work together on this project. So Megan, can you tell us just a little bit about that story of leaving the community and coming back and your desire to want to improve things here in your hometown?
Sure. So I grew up in Ottawa and graduated from Ottawa Glandorf High School and couldn't wait to leave. I wanted to get away so badly, and I ended up leaving and going to college in Akron, and then from there going to law school in Florida, and from Florida moving to New York City, and from New York City moving to Philadelphia with little stops here and there along the way, and never, even until the very end, thought that I would end up coming back here. But then my grandmother passed away, and my dad's brothers and sisters had this empty house, and houses need people. And my husband and I thought that we could maybe buy this house and use it as a second home. So we ended up moving back after we bought this house, but kind of accidentally. I came home for a real estate closing, and the lawyer who was doing the real estate closing asked me if I would ever consider moving back. And I kind of laughed and said no. And then she said, if you ever change your mind, call me back. And I went home and some crazy stuff happened and we had kids. And that was probably the craziest thing that happened. And I remember her saying that, and I ended up calling her out of the blue, kind of cold calling her a year or so later and saying, hey, when you said that to me, were you serious? And she was, and that evolved into us moving back here. And when I moved back, I bought into an existing law firm here and became a partner there. But as part of that partnership, I also bought into these buildings where the partnership was using the office space. And the second story of those buildings was completely vacant, except for some occasional tenants who were there. And the apartments that were upstairs in that space were actually pretty run down. I feel like dated is the nicest possible way that you could say that. And we ended up going through tenants because nobody wanted to stay up there for very long. It wasn't a nice space. And I kept coming back to this idea that when I would come back here in all these places that I lived, there was not a place for me to stay. My husband is really, really allergic to animals, and all of my family members had pets. So we would come back here and end up staying in hotels and have to drive 25 or 30 minutes to visit my family while we were home. And I kind of threw it out there. And this idea, actually, Amy, I think we called you after we started talking about it, kind of caught on fire. It was like a slow burn at first. And you helped us walk through those beginning stages. But it has evolved into what is now a functioning hotel, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Nicole, you kind of have a little bit of a similar story early in your life.
Yeah.
Tell us about that a little bit.
I also grew up in Putnam County. I grew up just outside of Gilboa, went to PG High School, and then right after high school moved to Chicago, where I went to college at Illinois Institute of Technology. The whole goal there was to be gone for, 5, maybe 10 years. And then it quickly became almost 15. COVID was really a catalyst for us wanting to move back here to be close to family. I actually reached out to Jeff Krause about working for him, and he was like, yeah, we don't care. You can be remote. That's totally fine. Started working for him, and yeah, we got involved with a lot of projects, and I thought, how cool. This is amazing things that are going on in my hometown and the surrounding communities. And I thought, well, I think it's a great time to move back. And my mom was looking to downsize, and my sisters were all moving back. So it worked out great.
Thank goodness for people selling their homes,
Yeah.
bringing all you people back
I
to
love
Putnam
it.
County. I remember in those early days, Megan, when you and some of your partners for the building first reached out and said, what if? Like, could we do this? And we started running the market analysis and all these type of things, looking at the financing. And you said, we need a great partner. And that connection was made with Nicole and Jeff and their team at Brick Street Studio. What were, if you guys could tell me a little bit about some of those very first conversations, like when you were talking about, this is the feel that we want, and this is why we want to do it. How did you guys start that whole process of thinking about dreaming and vision what it could be?
Nicole, do you remember? What I remember first and foremost about that beginning stages is us calling you, actually, Amy, and saying, hey, what do you think about this? And within like 25 minutes, you were in my office.
Hey, we're all about making dreams come true.
I love it.
Yeah, I remember when you guys approached us about working with you guys on the project, I thought, how cool. This is a need that I've had personally, and I know a lot of other people have had that need. And I honestly thought it was a great thing for the community, and I was super pumped to be a part of it.
I definitely remember wanting to make sure that the historic elements in the building were honored. And I also remember kind of crossing both my fingers behind my back, hoping that we had enough money to like do it right. That was kind of a big thing for me. I didn't want it to turn out to be a project where we threw it together and then in the end it was not done well.
There is really something about wanting to preserve the history, but give a nod to the future as well. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that's something that you've been able to accomplish working together on that?
I do. Do you?
Yeah, I think when you guys approached us about doing this project, I could feel that was a priority for you guys, and we love that. That's something that's important to our firm as a whole. So we were super excited to be able to collaborate with the contractors and get their involvement and their expertise in how to preserve things in the best ways and definitely keep that feel for the building.
I was super appreciative of that you and Metzger Breckheisen also, because I feel like I've worked with contractors before just by virtue of my professional life. And a lot of times contractors will talk you out of doing the hard work.
Yeah.
They want to, or sometimes they'll talk you out of doing stuff because it's more expensive. But the banister specifically, them wanting to tear down the banister and completely refinish it and make it code compliant, that was pretty amazing to me. And all the little touches and finishes with the woodwork, making it look like it looked previously. I think those things turned out really, really well.
One thing that sticks out to me, maybe not in the first year, because there was a lot of brainstorming and visioning until we really, picked up some speed and got going. But in year 2, I remember us talking about how many collaborators and how many partners this was going to take to get this done, so that you didn't feel like you were off on an island trying to figure it out on yourself, and that everybody kind of understood what the vision of the owners were and what the design plan was. I feel like really helped pull in the right partners at the right time. So once we kind of figured out the financing and how all the capital was going to work, walk me through a little bit about how you found, the contractors and how that all worked out, how that all came together, over the course of maybe half a year or a year. I know a lot of that was probably your input and led by Nicole and her team.
Honestly, I don't think we had a lot of design input from the beginning, except that I probably more outspokenly than my business partners was pretty adamant that I wanted it to keep that historic charm. I think we were guided largely by Brick Street and their kind of vision, knowing that was important. And you all made that connection with us, with the contractor. Mm-hmm. And we got bids from several contractors, and I think we ended up choosing Metzger Breckheisen primarily because they were undergoing a similar renovation with a building they had just bought in Findlay on Main Street. And them talking about it and speaking to specific problems with old brick buildings and the masonry work and the decisions you have to make about how you're going to insulate them. Speaking about those ways in a really educated way was probably what we noticed most and what made us choose them. They ended up doing such a great job. I think their project is actually they're doing a ribbon cutting soon.
Yeah, I think they just posted that they just all opened their offices on that first floor. So
Yeah.
What's that like for you, Nicole, listening to someone's vision and thinking, okay, the onus is on us to make sure this happens and make sure it comes true? How do you go about finding all the partners for the project?
I mean, I think we're really blessed. Our team has a lot of different interests. Jeff has a lot of interest in theming and personal experience through the design. And we have a lot of technical team members and artistic team members. Abby, our partner, she is very involved with the art and the interior design of the project. But knowing that what they wanted to do was preserve the building and maximizing the amount of suites we could get, and then all the technical challenges around the building code and all of those unique parts of it. But like Megan said, teaming with Metzger Breckheisen, they had a lot of input on the technical parts of the construction. So we kind of had we were kind of ready for those things before they even came up, and we could kind of anticipate what we wanted to be able to protect and what we wanted to present in a classy way throughout the building.
I think doing these historic preservation projects the learning curve sometimes can be like straight uphill, like intimidating to the best of the best. So hats off to you guys for surrounding yourself with so many great partners. Would we be able to take a couple minutes to describe, maybe not in the fine detail, but generally what the DeFord Boutique Hotel includes for someone that hasn't seen it or hasn't been there? Like, what's there? What amenities? What type of rooms? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, you're going to catch me off guard here.
Well, we know there's 7 rooms.
So there are 7 suites, and each one has a different name and a kind of different feel. You were speaking about Jeff's like of theming, and this is actually funny because when we first started working on this, Jeff Krause pitched this idea of a different theme for every room, and my initial reaction was very cringy, but he definitely had the right group of people working on that because those worked out really well. But each room has a different feel. There are several suites that are basically 1-bedroom apartments with full kitchens. There are several suites that are full kitchens with a kind of studio vibe. And then there are several kind of traditional hotel room, sort of just traditional hotel rooms. I'm trying to think like what people might find fascinating about those. I mean, I think the real charm is the space itself. I mean, there are these giant windows that overlook the courthouse and Main Street and this amazing light. I remember the first time I ever walked up there. When I came home, I probably bought this building or my share of it before I had ever seen the upstairs. And I remember walking up there and it was just full of file cabinets, like tons of file cabinets full of decades worth of legal files, and looking out over Main Street and looking at the courthouse and being like, oh my word, these windows, they were huge. And it sort of felt like a time capsule. I'm glad somebody caught those before pictures, but a lot of it is just the space. There's a common area that has a lovely lounge where people can come out together. There are little seating areas sort of tucked in front of windows in that space, and high ceilings and beautiful light. And I don't know if you have anything to add, Nicole. I'm not.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you talked about Jeff bringing that idea to the table of doing the themed rooms. I'm more minimalist in taste for the most part. So that was a hard pivot for me as well. But I think that we all sat down at our conference table, and when we were trying to pick out the rooms and what we wanted to do with those and kind of coming up with just different ideas, that day was really fun. And we landed on some really great options, and I'm pretty sure that most of them stayed. I know I fought for the 419 room, particularly because I felt like everything had a really masculine feel to it. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, we need to have one, like, ladies want to come back on a little girls' weekend trip. We got to have something that's a little more soft, a little more cozy and cute, and go with that, which is not normally my taste, but I thought it needed it.
And that room is perfectly placed. It's kind of like tucked away from the lounge. It's just perfect.
Yeah. And a lot of the other pieces that we pulled, like the Beardsley Lounge that you were talking about, that was one of the nameplates on the building. So we wanted to bring that in. And a lot of the photos and artwork throughout the building is all Ottawa-based. And we actually worked with Phantasm Designs here in Ottawa to do that, and they were awesome. We kind of came to them with the spirit of what we wanted, and they were able to run with it, and it was fantastic.
How many hours did you spend in the library researching for the art? I heard it was quite a bit, Nicole.
Yeah. Well, Christy Krause, she was an extension of our team for that, and she ran with that idea. She went to the library,
Christy.
And she pulled all of these archives and did an incredible job logging them, and had this awesome Excel sheet that she put together that had all of them, this is what we want for this room and all that. And then we kind of weeded through it and picked, and then stylized a lot of the images, because there were old photos from not magazines, but newspapers and that kind of thing. And a lot of historical postcards and that. So a lot of them needed a little Photoshop love, but yeah.
The canvases throughout the DeFord are just incredible.
They turned out so well.
Do you know what stands out to me when I'm there is it just feels like you know where you are. And so sometimes if you go to a chain hotel in a city, it looks like maybe the same brand of a hotel you stayed in another city or another state, but this is like unmistakably feels like the community of Ottawa. And when people come, it's just part of the overall experience. At least that's how I felt when I was in the space.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of cool that, like Megan mentioned before, that view in one of the suites looking down onto the courthouse, we themed that room the Gavel because it was naturally, why not? And there's so many beautiful old photos and artwork of that building being built that I myself had never even seen. And so I think that's also great for people who even live in the area. It's a new experience for them too, to get to see all of that artwork and pictures of Ottawa as it used to be.
Mm-hmm. How has your users been describing the space or their experiences? Have you had any feedback from some of your early guests at the Ford? Any reoccurring themes that you hear from people when they're in the space?
I don't hear the same thing over and over again, but I definitely hear people saying it's amazing that this is here, which is really cool. I think that was part of our intention, is to bring this sort of what feels like an elevated space to Ottawa. And you don't have to travel to Findlay or to Lima or somewhere else to stay there. It just has a good feel. My favorite thing about that space is you walk up there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when I'm having a bad day and my office is directly underneath, I'm like, I just want to go sit up in the lobby for a minute. It's like calm and quiet. It feels very peaceful. Mm-hmm. And people have said that it feels peaceful and quiet. And Christy did such a good job with the themes of the room.
Yeah.
That everybody makes comments about that.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about some of the journey that wasn't so easy. You had the dream, you had the vision, you have all these great partners, but there's still hiccups in the process. There's hard things, challenging things. Tell us a little bit about how you, either Nicole and or Megan or together as a team, worked through, the permits are taking longer than we want, or those type of things, to really like push through and get to the end, to when you had your opening in was November 2024.
I think the most frustrating thing for us was the timing. Like everything just takes longer than you think it should. And it's easy for us to say as we're standing back and watching, but it felt like it took forever to get the permits that we needed. And then the contractor would be there, but then subs needed to come in and days would pass. And this is just kind of what it's like to watch any construction project, I think. It certainly gave me a better sense of empathy for my clients who are going through giant construction projects. But yeah, I think everything just took longer. Other than that, besides the part, I don't know, we had really great people involved. I feel like there's certainly no way we could have done not just like the architectural drawings, but all of the design aspects. And we were super lucky to be introduced to the woman who initially managed the hotel, so that by the time we got ready to have to set up booking and doing things like that, we had somebody experienced who was able to do all of that work for us. And I don't know how we would have done that ourselves. I mean, we're not hoteliers. We are lawyers and accountants. So something else that I think you helped us with a lot, Nicole, was that because we are people who are, I don't want to say we're always literal black and white people, but we're people who follow codes and regulations and rules and look at a lot of paper. We are not design people. And one of my favorite things about working with you guys was just how much rendering you did. So you really gave us a visual of what it was going to look like. And, sometimes you need that little pep. Like there's like a giant morale booster just to see and I wish that I was a person who could walk into an empty room and imagine what it was going to look like when it was all finished. But that doesn't always come easily to me. So it was really, really cool to see that. I feel like in those times when we were just wanting it to be done, you could go back and visit those renderings and think like, oh, this is what it's going to look like. Jeff and I were just laughing the other day about how closely your images match some of the rooms too. Yeah. You can go back and look at the renderings and the completed project looks remarkably similar, which is really fun.
I love that. You're doing accounting work and legal work and you got your inspiration board on the wall for the hard days, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any advice from a building owner and someone having been through a historic, building preservation project and or from the design and architecture project for the next generation, the next building owner or property owner or people about getting started and finding the right partners? What type of advice would you have for people that are thinking about this in the future?
I feel like the biggest piece of advice is find the right people.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think that was the big thing for me. And I have 3 other building partners. So there were times when we weren't all 100% on the same page. And it was nice to have outside perspective. I feel like there were times when different members of the team of people who ultimately made this happen were able to kind of talk to somebody in a way that made them understand or see or just get on the same page. And that was super useful. But the people for us, I mean, we just couldn't have done this without the people. Yeah. If we hadn't walked or called your office and had you come talk to us, I don't know how we would have gone from this idea to actually having the space open and up and running now.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I know there's a ton of local contractors that were a part of this project, and everybody brought new ideas to the table, and everybody was able to build upon them. My advice would be to just reach out to people and get as many involved as possible on the front end. Just to have that kind of planning phase as a huge part of the overall project, because that helps you foresee any problems that are going to come up, and then lean on people who you need and who are going to be a part of the project to be able to collaborate with and resolve things in a time-efficient manner.
Do you think, Megan, I feel this from an economic development standpoint, but we as a group really had to jump quickly at getting people on board to partner because of the vibrancy grant that we were going after, because we couldn't just say, well, we hope this will happen or this is what we want to happen. Like we had to prove like this person has a role, this group has a role, here's how we're going to tackle this. Very early on, it kind of forced our hand to really get a good group around maybe earlier on in the process than what we would have had to otherwise.
I don't know what normal would have looked like because the only experience I have is the one that I lived. But I do think that that's true. We were getting that grant application around, and we did have to show them what we were going to do and that we were serious. And I think part of that was having building plans drawn so that we could show that we weren't just coming up with some pie in the sky idea, that we were actually planning on following through. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but
I think too, from the design standpoint of getting those in place, all the capital, I mean, how are we going to make this all happen? It's not like one person can do it on their own, right? So we had multiple types of, partners on the financing part of it. We had partners from some of our state and regional offices that were helping really early on. We had to think about job creation and so many different things that the city were requiring.
I've almost forgotten about some of these things.
That's good.
Do you know, and I feel like sometimes in times of stress, you don't make memories. Yeah. And in some ways, I felt like that. But the most stressful thing, I think, was the timing. To me, it was never, I was, as you were talking about that, I was just thinking about the financing and probably because we started working with you from the very beginning, I never felt stressed out about that. Fort Jennings State made it really easy. I think the administration of the grant afterward was at times frustrating because it just felt really technical and like it took longer than we wanted it to be reimbursed. But honestly, I feel like we had a relatively easy road. That's not to say we didn't spend a lot of money. I think we all spent more money than we wish we had to have spent, but it's worked out. And so in that respect, it was great. But we always, from the very beginning, we were talking to you about economic development opportunities. And so I think we always knew that we had different options. And you and the other people we spoke with were great about explaining which ones might work in certain scenarios. So we didn't end up using every single economic development tool, but we definitely had knowledge of them and were aware that they were available if we needed them.
Mm-hmm. I've had people tell me more than once, probably a dozen times, that is a bold move for someone in a small town of Ottawa of 5,000 people. And I say, why not be bold? Because part of the work in your building and your partner in the Main Street corridor project with the grant was, we want to do this, and we feel and know that it's going to spur more development down the road in the community. And we've seen that happen already with other buildings. And I had a small building owner tell me a few months ago, well, I can't have the least maintained or the ugliest building on the block. I'm going to put in a few new windows and maybe put on, some nice paint and so forth. So I really do truly think it's been a catalyst and spurred other people to want good buildings and good things for the community. Have you seen or experienced any of that on your end, either of you?
For sure.
Yeah.
I think about this pretty often. I feel like we should send this podcast recording to the Vibrancy Grant people. But in retrospect, I think we did exactly what we said we were going to do in that grant application. And it hasn't even taken that long, which is pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. The amount of work that has happened in buildings and people making decisions. With regard to being bold, my advice to anybody who's in that situation is to just not think about it very hard. And lucky for us, it's working out right now. But yeah, it is scary. Once upon a time, I worked in a different place and had a different legal partner. And I remember thinking about our partnership in a way. I was younger and probably more risk averse. And he was just this bold person who sometimes made big decisions, and I would watch him and think, that's crazy that he's doing that. But he always landed on his feet and lived a better life because of that. And I think about that pretty often. Like he's not my partner anymore, but I still keep in close contact with him. And I, in some ways, try to mirror that way of living, because I think if you don't take risks, you're not going to get that big reward.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen any other development spurred, whether or not it's something that your firm worked on, or do you just personally being in the area, how do you think the domino effect has been because of the DeFord project?
I think it has definitely been a catalyst for the Main Street, and not just necessarily in Ottawa, but other neighboring communities. They see the success of the Dumont building and the DeFord building, and they see that it can be done, and they see, well, why not? And I think that has helped a lot of people know that that's something that they should be passionate about, and they should definitely put effort into.
It really is a passion game, isn't it?
It is, but it's so cool. Sometimes I walk outside of our building quite often because I'm a lawyer, and I walk to the courthouse, and sometimes I look around and you can see the change on Main Street. And we all know from our various avenues of professional work that there are so many other things in the works, things that we can see, but also things we can't even talk about yet, which is really amazing to think like it wasn't that long ago. Mm-hmm. And there's already been a lot of progress, which is really, really neat and inspiring.
I think it's amazing to see because, I've only been back, I think we moved back in late 2021. So it was almost in tandem with when you guys opened, that it had been 3 years since we had been back. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I would have never imagined being able to work on projects like this, let alone seeing it being done and built and people experiencing the spaces already. So I think it's great.
Thank you both for sharing your passions and your bold moves with us. Just to wrap things up here, Megan, where can people find more information about the DeFord Boutique Hotel?
You can visit the website at www.the-deford.com, and you can also see us on Instagram and Facebook, Airbnb, Verbo.com. I think that's it.
Excellent. Thank you both so much for being a part of the podcast today.
Thank you for having us.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. To catch future episodes of Putnam Pulse, follow the Putnam County Community Improvement Corporation on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. You can also learn more at putnamcountyohio.com. Thanks for listening.